Hello, my fellow adventurers. It's Auror. Tonight, I'm excited to share with you the story of a young wizard who would grow into one of the most dedicated Aurors the magical world has ever known, Harry Potter, as he embarks on his very first case. Let me know in the comments where you're listening in from and which tales you'd love to hear next. If you'd like to support the channel, you can join Griffin's Nest on Patreon for ad-free and background music-free versions of stories. Let's begin. The morning mist clung to the cobblestones of Diagon Alley as Harry Potter adjusted his deep blue Auror robes for what felt like the 100th time. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the brass handle of the ministry's entrance, hidden behind the leaky cauldron. After 3 years of intensive training, countless examinations, and more hexes deflected than he cared to count, this was it. His first official day as a fully qualified Auror. The familiar sensation of the ministry's lifts carried him down to level 2, where the Auror headquarters buzzed with quiet efficiency. Senior Aurors moved with practiced confidence between cubicles, their conversations a low murmur of case updates and investigative strategies. Harry's footsteps echoed slightly as he made his way to his assigned desk, a modest space near the back corner that still felt impossibly important. Potter. The gruff voice belonged to Senior Auror Kingsley Shacklebolt, who had become head of the department after the war. His presence was as commanding as ever, but there was warmth in his eyes as he approached Harry's desk. "Ready for your first case?" Harry straightened, his nervousness giving way to determination. "Yes, sir." Kingsley placed a thin file on Harry's desk. "Nothing too dramatic for your first assignment. We've received reports of unusual magical accidents in Little Whinging. No, not your old neighborhood," he added with a slight smile, noting Harry's expression. "This is Little Whinging in the Cotswolds. Picturesque wizarding village. Population about 300. 3 separate incidents in the past 2 weeks. Might be nothing. Might be something. That's what we need you to find out." Harry opened the file, scanning the neat handwriting that documented each incident. A cauldron explosion at the local apothecary that had been far more destructive than it should have been. A broomstick that had gone completely haywire during a routine cleaning, nearly taking out half the village's prized rose garden. And most recently, a protective charm on the village's ancient oak tree that had backfired spectacularly, causing every leaf to turn bright purple and emit a low humming sound. "You'll be working with Senior Auror Penelope Clearwater on this one," Kingsley continued. "She's got experience with magical accidents and a good eye for detail. Learn from her, Potter. But don't be afraid to trust your instincts." Within the hour, Harry found himself standing in the heart of Little Whinging, a village that seemed to have stepped out of a storybook. Thatched cottages lined winding lanes, their gardens bursting with flowers that shimmered with subtle magical properties. The air itself felt different here, cleaner somehow, with an underlying current of old magic that made Harry's skin tingle slightly. Penelope Clearwater was waiting for him by the village's central fountain, an elegant structure carved from white stone and enchanted to produce water that sparkled like diamonds in the afternoon sun. She was older than Harry remembered from their brief encounters during the war, her hair now streaked with silver, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Harry," she greeted him with a warm smile. "Ready to solve your first mystery?" They began their investigation at Bramblewood Apothecary, a cozy shop that still bore scorch marks from the cauldron explosion. The proprietor, an elderly wizard named Cornelius Bramble, wrung his hands as he recounted the incident. "Never seen anything like it," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Been brewing the same pepper-up potion for 40 years. Same recipe, same technique. But this time, the cauldron just went mad. Exploded with such force it took out half my inventory." Harry examined the remnants of the cauldron, running his fingers along the twisted metal. There was something odd about the way it had warped, as if the explosion had come from within, but been guided by an external force. He pulled out his wand and cast a revealing charm, watching as faint traces of magical residue became visible. "Penelope," he called softly. "Look at this." She approached, her experienced eyes immediately focusing on what Harry had discovered. "Interference magic," she murmured. "Someone deliberately destabilized the brewing process." Their next stop was the home of Millicent Clearwater, no relation to Penelope, as she was quick to point out, the owner of the wayward broomstick. The elderly witch lived in a cottage so covered in ivy that it seemed to have grown from the earth itself. She met them at her garden gate, her broomstick held firmly in her arthritic hands. "Beastly thing tried to take my head off," she said, though her tone suggested more annoyance than fear. 40 years I've been using this broom for household chores. Never given me a moment's trouble until last week." Harry examined the broomstick carefully, noting the way the bristles seemed to quiver with barely contained energy. Another revealing charm showed the same type of interference magic they'd found at the apothecary. "Someone's been very busy," Penelope observed as they walked toward their final stop. The ancient oak tree stood in the village square, its purple leaves creating an otherworldly canopy that hummed with a sound like distant music. Village children had gathered around it, pointing and giggling at the spectacle, while their parents watched with expressions of concerned bewilderment. "The protective charm was cast by our village's wise woman, Esmeralda Greenthumb," explained the village elder, a dignified witch named Cordelia Fairweather. "She's maintained the magical protections on this tree for decades, but when she renewed the charm last week, it went purple and started humming," Harry finished, studying the tree with growing interest. The same interference magic was present here, but stronger, more concentrated. As the afternoon wore on, Harry and Penelope interviewed more villagers, each story adding another piece to the puzzle. A weather charm that had produced snow in July instead of gentle rain. a light spell that had turned every lamp in the village green for 3 days. Small incidents, easily dismissed as simple magical mishaps, but the pattern was unmistakable. "Someone's targeting this village," Harry said, as they sat in the village's only pub, the Drowsy Dragon, reviewing their notes over butterbeer. But why? And how? Penelope leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "The magic isn't random. Look at the pattern. It's not meant to cause serious harm, just disruption, fear. Like someone's trying to drive people away," Harry mused. "Or make them distrust their own magical abilities," Penelope added. "Nothing makes a wizard feel more vulnerable than having their magic turn unreliable." That evening, Harry walked alone through the village streets, his mind turning over the evidence they'd gathered. The interference magic was sophisticated, requiring both skill and intimate knowledge of the spells being sabotaged. Whoever was doing this had been observing the village for some time, learning the routines and magical practices of its residents. He paused by the humming oak tree, its purple leaves rustling in the evening breeze. The sound was oddly soothing, like a lullaby played by the wind itself. As he stood there, lost in thought, he noticed something he'd missed earlier. A small cottage at the edge of the village square, its windows dark and garden overgrown. "Excuse me," he called to a passing villager. "Who lives in that cottage?" The witch, middle-aged with flour-dusted hands, glanced toward the house and frowned. "That's the old Thornwick place. Been empty for months now, ever since Ezra moved to London. Shame, really. He was a talented wizard, specialized in protective charms and household magic." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. "When did he move away?" "Oh, about 2 months ago. Said he'd received a better offer from some magical security company. Strange thing was, he seemed so reluctant to leave. Loved this village, he did. That night, Harry couldn't sleep. He lay in his room at the village's small inn, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Ezra Thornwick. 2 months ago, just before the magical accidents had started. A specialist in protective charms and household magic. Exactly the type of spells that had been sabotaged. By morning, he had a plan. "You want to do what?" Penelope asked over breakfast, her eyebrows raised. "I want to visit Ezra Thornwick in London," Harry said, buttering his toast with careful precision. "I think he might have some answers." "Based on what?" "The timing is suspicious, I'll grant you, but—" "It's more than timing," Harry interrupted gently. "Think about it. Someone with intimate knowledge of this village's magical practices. Someone who would know exactly which spells to target and how to sabotage them. Someone who might have a reason to want the village to seem unsafe or unreliable." Penelope considered this, her fingers drumming against her teacup. "You're suggesting he's sabotaging his old home. I'm suggesting we need to find out, he answered. The journey to London took them through the morning mist, apparating from the village square to the bustling streets of Diagon Alley. From there, they took the night bus to a modest neighborhood where Ezra Thornwick had supposedly found new employment. The address led them to a narrow townhouse, squeezed between a magical bookshop and a store selling self-stirring cauldrons. The brass nameplate read Thornwick Magical Securities, protective charms, and household safety. Convenient, Penelope murmured as they climbed the steps to the front door. Ezra Thornwick himself answered their knock. A thin, nervous man in his 50s with graying hair and ink-stained fingers. His eyes went wide when he saw their Auror robes. "Mr. Thornwick," Harry began, "we're investigating some unusual magical incidents in Little Whinging. I understand you used to live there." Yes, I did," Thornwick stammered, stepping back to allow them into his small office. "But I've been here in London for months now, building my business. You understand." Harry looked around the office, noting the sparse furnishings and the stack of unopened mail on the desk. "Business seems to be going well." "Oh yes, very well," Thornwick said quickly. "Lots of clients interested in protective charms. People are so worried about magical security these days. Especially in villages like Little Whinging," Penelope observed casually. "I imagine those recent magical accidents have people quite concerned." Thornwick's face went pale. Accidents. What accidents? For the next hour, they questioned Thornwick about his business, his reasons for leaving Little Whinging, and his knowledge of the village's magical practices. His answers were evasive, his manner increasingly desperate. But Harry could sense something else beneath the surface. Not malice, but fear. "Mr. Thornwick," Harry said finally, leaning forward in his chair, "I don't think you're doing this out of spite. I think someone is forcing you to do it." The man's composure cracked completely. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. "You don't understand," he whispered. "They have my daughter." The story came out in broken pieces. Thornwick's daughter, Lydia, had been kidnapped 3 months ago while visiting friends in London. Her captors had demanded a specific ransom. Not money, but Thornwick's services. He was to sabotage the magical systems of Little Whinging, making the village appear unsafe and unreliable. They said if I didn't do exactly what they asked, I'd never see her again, Thornwick sobbed. I tried to refuse, but they sent me a photo of her. She looked so scared. "Who are they?" Harry asked gently. "I don't know. They contact me through enchanted letters. No return address, no way to trace them. They want me to continue the sabotage until the village is completely evacuated." "But why?" Penelope pressed. "What's so important about Little Whinging?" Thornwick looked up, his eyes red with tears. "The land. The village sits on one of the most magically potent sites in Britain. The oak tree in the square is over 1,000 years old. It's a focal point for natural magic. Someone wants to claim that land for themselves." Harry felt the pieces clicking into place. And they need the village empty to do it legally. If everyone leaves voluntarily, they can purchase the land without interference. There's more, Thornwick continued. They've been pressuring the village council to sell, made offers that seemed generous at first, but the villagers refused. They love their home too much to leave for any price. So they decided to make the villagers want to leave, Harry concluded. The rescue of Lydia Thornwick took place that very evening. Using the enchanted letters as a tracking device, Harry and a team of experienced Aurors traced the kidnappers to an abandoned warehouse in London's magical district. The confrontation was swift and decisive. The criminals, revealed to be a group of dark wizards working for a magical property development company, surrendered without significant resistance when faced with trained Aurors. Lydia was unharmed, but frightened, and the reunion between father and daughter brought tears to Harry's eyes. As he watched Ezra Thornwick hold his daughter close, Harry felt a deep satisfaction, not just from solving the case, but from reuniting a family torn apart by greed and fear. The trial was held the following week. The mastermind behind the scheme was revealed to be Caractacus Blackwood, a wealthy wizard who had made his fortune buying up magically significant properties and exploiting their natural power for commercial purposes. He had planned to build a magical resort on the site of Little Whinging, complete with artificial magical attractions that would have completely disrupted the natural magical ecosystem. Blackwood and his associates received lengthy sentences in Azkaban, and the Thornwick family was provided with protection and counseling to help them recover from their ordeal. Harry's final report on the case was thorough and detailed, but as he sat in the ministry's quiet evening atmosphere, finishing the last of his paperwork, he found himself thinking less about the technical aspects of the investigation and more about what he had learned. His first case as an Auror had taught him that the most important skill wasn't dueling or defensive magic. It was the ability to see beyond the obvious, to understand that people's actions often stemmed from fear or desperation rather than malice. Ezra Thornwick wasn't a criminal. He was a father trying to protect his daughter. The villagers of Little Whinging weren't victims of random magical accidents. They were being systematically targeted by someone who saw their home as nothing more than a profitable piece of real estate. A week later, Harry returned to Little Whinging for the village's celebration of the case's resolution. The oak tree's leaves had returned to their natural green, though the villagers had decided to keep the gentle humming sound. They found it soothing and magical in the best possible way. Ezra Thornwick had returned to his cottage, his magical securities business relocated to a small office in the village where he could help his neighbors strengthen their protective charms. His daughter Lydia had enrolled at Hogwarts, where she was already showing promise in defense against the dark arts. "Thank you," Thornwick said to Harry as they stood beneath the oak tree, watching the village children play in the dappled sunlight. "Not just for finding her, but for understanding, for seeing that I wasn't the real enemy." Harry smiled, feeling the warm satisfaction of a job well done. Sometimes the best part of being an Auror isn't catching the bad guys, he said. It's helping the good ones find their way home. As the sun set over Little Whinging, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber, Harry felt a deep sense of peace. His first case as an Auror was complete. But more than that, he had discovered something important about himself and his chosen profession. Being an Auror wasn't just about fighting dark wizards or solving mysterious crimes. It was about protecting the things that mattered most. Family, community, the simple right of people to live in peace in the places they loved. The village of Little Whinging would continue to thrive, its magical oak tree humming softly in the evening breeze, its residents secure in the knowledge that their home was safe. And Harry Potter, newly confident in his role as an Auror, would carry the lessons of his first case with him throughout his career. That justice wasn't always about punishment, but sometimes about healing, understanding, and giving people the chance to make things right. As he prepared to apparate back to London, Harry took one last look at the peaceful village, its windows glowing warmly in the gathering dusk. This was why he had become an Auror, not for the excitement or the danger, but for moments like this, when he could help preserve the quiet magic of ordinary life. The soft humming of the oak tree followed him as he disappeared into the night, carrying with him the satisfaction of a case closed and a family reunited, ready for whatever mysteries tomorrow might bring. Good night.